Banana Slam Jam.
So this is a 1400 MMR Underlord replay offlane. First and foremost, looking at your starting items. Don't start mangoes. You don't need them. You can get them if you need them later in lane. But I usually go something like a Basilius or a Soul Ring, or I fly myself mangoes, or I get a stick. Whatever have you. It's just a waste of your starting items to go with the 2 mangoes. Definitely a salve is much better. And then at that point, if I'm against a physical damage 1 position, I will almost always buy either a Ring of Protection or a Gauntlet of Strength, whether I think I need to trade better or whether or not I need the armor. So in this case, I would have gone Tango, Salve, Quelling Blade, Double Branch, and a Ring of Protection. You pretty much never need 2 sets of Tangos in the offlane because you just fly yourself Tangos. Really the only exception I've had is Lich, because Lich just nukes you so much. So I like to have 6 Tangos against Lich, but that's pretty much the only hero I've found myself having 6 Tangos against. Okay. So, starting items have already been flamed. Let's move on. I like that you queued stuff up in the quick buy.
30 seconds.
Oh, this one's in the bag. Hook, line, and sinker.
Do not level your passive. Okay, first and foremost, your passive is generally pretty trash level 1. Second off, how the fuck do you buy mangoes and then level your passive? Why did you buy mangoes if you're gonna wait till level 2 to even have an ability that uses mana? So, all flame aside, man. I know you're here for learning. So, your build, your item build, and your skill builds need to line up. Honestly, if you built no mangoes and went passive, okay. If you built 2 mangoes and went first ability, okay. You know, like, even if it's wrong and I'll tell you about it, have a reason and have some synergy with the way you're building. I don't like passive on Underlord if I can't trade with the hero. Slark's like a carry that you don't want to trade hits with. You want to, like, make him trade with you underneath your Firestorm and then hit him if he hits you back underneath the Firestorm. So, like, if I'm against, like, what's a good example? If I'm against ranged heroes, I'll tend to level my E, just because they don't really trade with me all that well, and I can usually really deny a ranged hero. But against melee heroes that I can't trade with all that well, I don't like to level my passive level 1. I just think it also, like I said, just doesn't line up with your item build to start the game. Okay. You are playing pretty aggressive, which is good. I don't think the Slark should be allowing you to hit, but that's okay. You guys also have really no way to secure the range. Yeah, A can use his E or whatever, but the one thing about Underlord with Q, your Q doesn't secure the range, but it allows you to, like, lay your Q on the ground and then hit the range, where the opponent doesn't really want to fight you on top of it because they're tanking the damage. Yeah, I know it's underwhelming damage, kind of, but it's still 150 damage level 1 if they're standing in it, so they don't want to really stand in it. It's actually 150 damage plus the percent burnage damage, but yeah. Okay, so moving on from there. Notice how you did have to just give up the 2 range creeps, though, because you went passive. Mainly considering that range creeps are very important, and you should always have an idea of how you're going to get them, if there is a way. Sometimes there just isn't, but in this case, I believe there was. So notice at the beginning of the game, I flamed your mangoes. You haven't even used an ounce. You haven't used a single point of mana at 2:15. First point of mana used. Not a bad play. Good trade. You should tell your support to pull here. I don't know if you communicate that much, but you should definitely tell your support to pull. It looks like he is pulling, so people are actually learning to pull even in 1K, so that's pretty impressive. I like what you're doing here. You're actually protecting the pull, but no salve. Notice how those 2 mangoes, I would love those to be a salve. Forehead. That was a very bad use of your Firestorm. I don't know exactly what you were thinking there. You did fly yourself a salve. Would have loved that to be the opposite order, so you were full health at all times, and then fly yourself a couple mangoes. See what I'm saying? Same idea, but different execution, a little bit more efficient. So overall, you're on the right path with your items. Like, you know what you need, but you're just buying them in the wrong order. That can apply for big items too, and understanding at what point in the game you need what. If you can't identify in the laning stage when you need what, you're not going to be able to do it by the 10 to 20 minute mark in terms of bigger items, A lot of times the items that you come to can be correct, but the order you bought them is wrong, and that applies at all stages of the game, and in this case, it's just super early.
Take that.
Something to always think about exactly why you're buying the item, because if you have an exact reason why you think you're buying the item, then it'll usually work out better for you. So you do go for the Bracer. I personally wouldn't go Bracer here. You're against Slark Dazzle, which is all physical damage. Even Dazzle is physical damage, so Bracer doesn't really offer you all that much here. Medusa is also physical damage, and so is Tidehunter, actually, largely physical damage. And even Bounty Hunter is largely physical damage, so I just see no point in a Bracer. Good tower pressure. Oh, taking a little too much damage here. You're gonna have the TV home. Okay. I've seen worse things happen, but obviously not ideal.
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
You're gonna walk back top. That's fine. They're kind of doing some stupid shit here, but that's okay. I don't know why Dazzle's, sitting with his Slark farming underneath. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. Your AA pulls a BSJ and feeds its courier casually. That's what I like to do. So in this bracket, feel free to tell your supports, man. Like, you're a hero that needs levels. You should definitely, tell your supports that they don't need to be with you. If they end up staying with you, so be it. But I would only guess that you're not telling them that. Like, your AA should be the one farming mid, and you should be the one farming top. And if you have the confidence to know that, you can direct your teammates. Like, hey, like, take mid. I'm already farming top. You're good. Kind of thing. Sometimes supports feel the need to stay with you because they're used to playing with really bad cores that demand attention when they don't need it. So, if you think the guy just doesn't know, maybe he does think he's supposed to leave, but he doesn't want to get, like, pinged by you and reported or some shit, so... So I don't mind what you're doing, but I definitely think it would have been better that you were top and the support was mid. So it kind of starts with that communication. And even if your teammates don't know it, you can initiate that conversation. I definitely would have flown myself boots and some clarities. There's no reason to wait for the full boots, phase boots. This is just inefficiency for sure. Same idea here. You should not be the one defending mid. And I understand that someone needs to defend mid. But if you haven't at least tried to tell your team, like your support AA, to defend mid, that's a problem. Because as an offlaner and as a core, it is your job somewhat to tell the supports your needs. Like, yeah, maybe it's not your job to tell them where to go, but if you say I don't need you top, and like you can go elsewhere, and then like in that case, I'm thinking, okay, I don't need him top. Where could he go? And I see mid lane just being pushed in, that kind of thing.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
Okay.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Getting pretty farmed, so let's see what items you go here. I think if you watch me play heroes like Underlord,
Radiant's top tower is
it just doesn't happen where I'm sitting at 20% HP and 20% mana. You're effectively supposed to be farming, but you're also supposed to effectively be in the game. And what I mean is, if there's a 4-on-4 that breaks out on the other side of the map, you would literally never be able to go there. So that effectively removes you from the game. So when you're an offlaner, when you're a carry, and you're supposed to be farming lanes, it is your responsibility to be capable of fighting as often as possible. So if you need to fly yourself some salves, if you need to change your item build, instead of a bracer, you actually have some more regen, whatever. It needs to be the case that you can show up to fights if your team needs you to. Does that mean you have to go to fights? No, that means that if your team in that specific game ends up needing you, you need to be able to. So this is pretty much an unacceptable TP. Usually if I'm running out of resources and I find myself having to continuously TP to push lanes, you should just stop farming jungle camps. That means you don't have time or resources to farm the jungle camps. That's usually what it means. Like using that extra Firestorm to clear the Golem camp rather than pushing mid and then running top, or like pushing mid and then going base. Really think to prioritize the fact that you have to push these lanes. So think about things that are detracting from you pushing the lanes. Is it the wrong item? Is it farming too much in the jungle? Is it not ferrying enough regen? You know, when was that extra Firestorm that you used that's putting you at 200 mana instead of 450? I mean, the 2 extra Firestorms, whatever. It all adds up. It's a bunch of little things. It's kind of like min-maxing, critical threshold of making sure that you're being efficient but also remaining impactful in the game. So you're being quote-unquote efficient because you're kind of doing your job, but this is only something I can really tell you. Please watch other players to see what I mean and how they manage to play heroes like Underlord and stay on the map. That's how I learn. That's how you can learn. Like this game, I probably would have gone Vlad's first item. I think it's really good against their lineup because they're purely physical damage. You don't need Greaves. Your 2 cores really capitalize on the Vlads. I think I would go like Vlad's Halberd here because Vlad's is great against their team. It gives you a nice little sustain. Like I think Underlord always needs 1 sustain item. I think it's either Vlad's, Pipe, or Greaves. In this case, I don't think you need Pipe or Greaves for all the reasons I've already talked about, and you also went Phase Boots, which was fine. I think you did need Phase Boots this game. So that Bracer could be a Basilius and a Buckler instead of the Quelling Blade. You know, at this point, usually you can afford to put Quelling Blade in your backpack while you're building up that Vlad's because Underlord does so much damage anyway. But, all these things aside, you know, it just comes down to these little bits of efficiency. It's like, sometimes it is as simple as that hero needs a regen item. You know, sometimes it is that simple. Sometimes you could just be using salves and clarities. You know, there's all types of solutions on all types of different heroes. But this is not acceptable to be TPing to your tier 1 with 300 health and 200 mana when all 4 of your teammates are grouped up bottom and the entire enemy team is alive. That's just like a recipe for a fight to potentially happen that you'll never be able to be at. And I never want to see this ever, especially as like a teamfight utility offlaner. And now you ult mid. Okay. So I like what you're trying to do. Now I'm going to tell you, simply put, watch me play some Underlord, watch somebody else play some Underlord, and just do it better by learning what little things we do to make sure this isn't happening to us. So you go back to base, you end up going Vlad's. Good. Very good. I would keep the Windlace over Quelling for sure. Let's rewind here. So let's ask ourselves what kind of lineup the opponent has, right? They have Medusa, Tidehunter, Slark. So Slark is pretty much their only mobile hero. So we need to be able to not get picked off by the Slark Bounty Hunter, but we also need to be very wary that Tide Medusa are incredibly immobile cores that are incredibly difficult to fight into. Let alone the fact that they have a Dazzle. So he's like really good at turning fights, protecting his cores, etc. The enemy team has literally no way to stop you from pushing phase boots and walking away. That's a pretty cool thing. By the way, this is trash. Never take that talent. I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. That doesn't look good. You should have 50 extra movement speed right now because you should have a Windlace and you should have this 30 movement speed talent. Not only do you take the movement speed talent on this hero every single game, but also it's incredibly valuable to have movement speed talents against low stun lineups, right? Why? Because the only counter to being really fast is by making you stand still. So, always consider that on heroes such as like Jug and shit when the opponent has no stuns, considering whether or not you're going to take the movement speed talent or the other talents. Let's see. So, everything here comes down to I look at their lineup and I say I need to not die to Slark Bounty Hunter, but I also need to like split push effectively to the point that I don't just fight directly into a Medusa Tide. That's just not going to ever work. You're never going to win that fight if you fight directly into them. And maybe if you force them apart, where you force the Medusa or Tide to TP top, and then you see the other one bottom, That's a difference, right? But if you haven't, like, forced them to separate and then you just walk into them, it's just never going to be good because that's what those heroes want you to do. It's kind of like a Viper, right? Okay. So you end up getting away. Could be worse. Yeah, your Razor kind of just fed, but I personally would have been pushing mid that whole time. Because my intent is to try to force them apart and then capitalize on them being separated. So to do that, I push lanes. You're allowed to use clarities and salves even if you have Assault Ring. So once again, you are very low very often. Okay, forcing reactions, that's fine. They use ults, perfectly fine. You might even want to force this now because they've used their ultimates. Looks like you're content to do that. No. Okay. So I think it's good for you to continue representing a threat right now to objectives. So staying around mid, I think, is overall pretty good. I would probably buy a Dust for the Bounty Hunter. I think you could assist in killing the Bounty Hunter. Nice kill. Don't think that should have really worked, but okay. Suddenly we got a double kill on our Underlord. Let's push bottom. No. No creep. Okay, good. Good. Resisted. Resisted. I would just love if you were moving at 50 movement speed faster while you're doing what you're doing. That would be awesome. Your Firestorm one-shots waves anyways. Let's see what he goes next. If he goes Halberd, he's like a 5k itemizer, 1k efficiency. Oh, Crimson? Okay, I don't hate Crimson. It's good against Medusa, but it's bad against Slark. I think Halberd's good versus both. Generally, I ask myself what is good against both cores. And if there's nothing that's good against both cores, I ask what's good against each core, and then I prioritize which one I think is more of a problem. But in this case, there is an item that's good versus both, so I would go that item. Try to remember to use your neutral items. It's hard, I know. I've tried to get used to it, but it's, you know, you just have this. You have a Rassive ring or Rassive ping. There you go. You used it. Nice, nice, nice. You see all of them bottom. I want you to at least look at this fight. How do I know what's going on, buddy? Do you really need to watch yourself hit these? Oh, nice. Okay, we looked. Very briefly looked. So right here, I'm thinking to myself, I'm either going to this fight or I'm farming top. So I'm A-clicking a creep top and then moving my camera to the fight. That's kind of how I find time to check the map. I think, what are my two choices? That fight or top? Okay, so I'm gonna, while I'm walking towards top, I'll look at the fight. And then if on the way to the top, I realize I want to go to the fight, I TP. But you're never gonna make an educated decision if you don't know what the hell's going on in the fight. So you do end up TPing, but we haven't seen anything. And you actually used your ultimate to get there, which is terrible, because that's your get out of jail free card. That should have definitely been a TP. So that's a yikes. I pretty much never ulti to fights unless I have to. It's kind of like Naga equivalently using her sleep to go to a fight, rather than using it to get out. Like, you only use it to initiate if you have to. So, overall, very bad usage of your ultimate there. It's kind of like using your Boots of Travel to TP base rather than a TP scroll. It's just strictly worse, so keep that in mind next time. I think you might have been trying to save time by having it be a 4-second channel, or is it 5? It's 5, right? Yeah, never mind, you don't even save time. I would have had Dust here for sure. Like I told you earlier. Just like when a situation like that happens, you can kill the Bounty Hunter. Because you're playing this like mobile split push game that I've told you want to be playing, you need to also be able to catch them if possible. Not only does that include you being survivable, but you need to be able to, like, the Bounty Hunter needs to be dissuaded from doing what he wants to do by you being a threat to him. So I don't hate the Crimson, like I said. I just think Halberd was better.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
Especially when you have a Vlad's.
Radiant's
Okay, this is quite the shit show.
attack. Radiant's top tower Radiant's top tower has fallen. Radiant's top tower.
Okay.
Radiant structures are fortified.
So at this point, I'm going to tell you right now, like, I'm going to watch a little bit more. But you need to... Your conceptual game seems pretty decent. In terms of, like, your items are pretty decent. Except for your starting items. Your overall, like, understanding that you're supposed to shove waves is pretty decent. Playing away from your team and trying to show up to fights. You're just not doing stuff fast enough. So, like, you just need to get better at more efficiency. It's generally speaking, I tell people, you know, you can get to 4K, 5K, no question. Just being efficient and not knowing a lick about Dota. Like, you don't have to know shit. You just have to be fast, right? In your case, I think you clearly have higher IQ, Dota IQ, than an average 1500 player. But I think your efficiency is definitely lacking. And I think that's going to be your downfall. So, you just need to go faster. And you need to watch other players to see what they do to go faster. It doesn't look like your decisions are necessarily slow. When I say that, I mean it's not like you're hesitating on your decisions. You're just being inefficient with your itemization, or not your itemization, your skill builds, your talent build, overall, like your regen usage, like buying yourself salves and clarities. If you're fighting yourself, not staying on the map enough with regen, either go to base and get regen or fly yourself regen. It is not a choice to be on the map with no health and no mana while your team could potentially fight. That's not an option. So you got to figure out one of the other options. You know, what is it, going to base to get health and mana at some point, or is it flying yourself more regen? Usually that comes down to whether or not I think I have to stay on the map at that specific moment. And if I think I have to stay on map, then I have to fly myself some regen. If I think I can afford to go home, then I will. Usually that's like if I push a wave and I'm like, there's nothing for me to do for the next 20 seconds. I'll TP home and then run out somewhere. You know, but if I feel like I'm constantly needing to do something, that's when you just have to ferry yourself some regen. I think a lot of these things would just be much easier decisions if you were just being faster. I know just being faster forehead, but like it is true though. It's sometimes it is just as simple as you need to be more efficient. And when you waste items like 500 gold on a bracer, it adds up. Like if that bracer was a Basilius, you would have had much less mana problems. You probably would have only had to fly like one salve to yourself. And it just adds up if you don't have a specific reason to buy the item. Like bracer is tankiness, especially against magic damage, and you just didn't need that this game. Okay, that guy was a Pepega. That's fine. You did fly yourself some dust, or you did buy some dust, so that's good. So you guys are fighting with no Tidehunter, which is okay, but I think you're overestimating yourselves here. At this point, you're kind of just too far behind. I think you guys have kind of just lost map control. I think when you kill somebody when you're this far behind, you should be more so looking to make use of the fact that you guys can farm more, as well as since they only have 4 heroes, maybe they'll separate, and you can look for more kills that way. But that's just an understanding of how strong you guys are as a team, and that's pretty hard. So I think if you guys want to make that call, say, hey, we see them under a war, let's go for it. I don't think that's a terrible play. Like I said, the Crimson Guard is just not as good as a Halberd. I firmly believe the Halberd would have been way better, and I hope you understand why. Because not only, like, Crimson Guard doesn't help you play the map. It helps you in team fights, but what I mean by play the map is if you have a Halberd and Slark is like trying to mess with you while you're split pushing, or like Bounty Hunter's trying to mess with you, that helps you to have a Halberd. But this Crimson, it doesn't do anything if you're like playing alone. So the Halberd will help you in team fights, but it'll also help you on the map. So if you can do something that, in terms of itemization or playstyle, that helps you with both, then that's great. If you only have a choice of one or the other, then in that game you have to itemize based on what you think is more important at that moment. So I usually do that to like base it off my teammates' timings, like how early do I think my team wants to fight. So if I think my team doesn't want to fight yet, I'll buy the item that helps me split push, and then I'll turn the next item into the team fight item, or like vice versa. Maybe I'll buy the team fight item first, so I know we have to take like 1 or 2 big team fights, and then once we win the team fights, I know I'm then gonna have to split push. But notice how, because I'm thinking about what the game's gonna look like, I'm making an educated guess on what items I think I'll need. And for you, like, I just have to imagine if you think about what a bracer does for you and you look at the opponent lineup, you just wouldn't buy a bracer. And I understand you're only 1,500, right? But at that point that you bought the bracer, that was like a fourth of your net worth, or like a third of your net worth. And it's like, yeah, it's not wasted because it's just an okay item, but it's just not the best item. And so when you're not itemizing efficiently and you're not, you clearly have a pretty good understanding of items, meaning like you're not, I've seen way worse itemization in 1K, but like if you're playing offlaners and you want to carry, you kind of just gotta be efficient on the map. Like that's what Underlord's gonna do. He doesn't carry by killing people solo or like doing some flashy play in a team fight. He just gets more farmed than the opponent, and eventually the opponent can't fight you. Like that's what Underlord does well. I also wouldn't pick Underlord into these types of heroes. I don't know when you picked it. If you picked it like Tide Dazzle Bounty Hunter, I probably would have picked a more mobile offlaner, something like a Bat. And if you picked it like first, that's acceptable, you know, whatever. I don't like it against heroes like Medusa, Slark all that much. But I guess it's not terrible against Medusa. It's really bad against Slark, though. You probably know that. So, let's see. At this point, the game's pretty much over. I think we've kind of lost our chance to win. But let's see what you do real quick one last time on the map. Let's see if you guys give it one last shot. Let's see. Okay. Imagine a halberd right there. Yeah, the game is just too hard. You guys try to take a fight, you even forced a ravage, and then it's just awkward to play the game, especially when you're in 1K. This would be a hard game to coordinate to even have a chance to come back in my bracket. But yeah, when you get this stuff down, I'm pretty confident that you'll gain some MMR with. It's just efficiencies and really focusing on that part of it. As long as your item build and skill build line up, I don't really care. It's easier to critique you. It's much more alarming to me when they don't line up, like I said in the laning stage. So really make sure they line up. For people who weren't there, it basically just means he built mangoes and then leveled his passive, so he didn't use any mana for the first like 2 minutes of the wave of the lane. But okay, man, hope you enjoyed this replay analysis and learned something from it. So all these be up on YouTube, and including this one.